is Robbie Lou Pendergraft, and we go. How long have you been a member of Second?
I have been a member of Second Church 60 years. That's probably older than your grandparents have. That's a long time.
What drew you to this church?
What drew me here? Well, I came to this church to work. I came from North Carolina. I was working in a church, secretary in a church in Fayetteville, North Carolina, the First Presbyterian Church there. And I met the minister here, Dr. Curry, and he said he was looking for a secretary. He wrote me a letter and asked me to come and work here. And so I came in January the 15th, 1943.
So what is your most memorable activity here?
Oh, that's easy. For me, I got to be chairman of the organ committee when we replaced the pipe organ. The old one we had been in about 50 years. It just died on the job and had some very serious problems. If we tried to repair it, we would have to go back and repair it again in a few more years. It was not terribly satisfactory, and one of the reasons that it gave so much trouble was that the organ mechanism, the pipe chamber, was not accessible. If I got into it, I had to get down on my back and scoot under some air ducts on the floor and then stand up again. So that you couldn't get to a lot of the pipes and valves in there to clean them. We even went so far as to look for a midget organ cleaner, but we couldn't find one anywhere. We wanted somebody who could get in there and clean that. So we decided that the thing to do was to get another pipe organ. I was chairman of the committee that did that. We worked on the project several years. We had a good time listening to pipe organs all over the eastern part of the country. We went from Burlington, North Carolina to Massachusetts and a lot of places between. We interviewed a number of pipe organ makers and finally decided on Mr. Fritz Nowak of Georgetown, Massachusetts, who made our current pipe organ for us, made it to specifications. It was specifically built for this church, and the Gothic case on the organ chamber was designed to match the Gothic architecture in the church. And being chairman of that was one of the most fun things I've ever done.
One day, way back when we had the Cecil Memorial House, which was before the garage, which was before the educational building, we had the Cecil Memorial House, and in there we had a meeting one afternoon of the leaders of the different parts of the church, different areas, and I was the president of the women of the church, and so I was invited to come, and we were talking about whether we would move this church out to a far place, you know, away from, everybody was moving out. Well, we decided that we would stay downtown and have a presence in the downtown. And I made the motion that we do that. And that was really something I think special that I did.
What is your most memorable activity here?
That's it. Family camp. Out at Camp Hanover. You all know that place?
Yes.
Sure, some of you have been out there. Well, it wasn't quite as fancy then in the 40s and 50s as it is today. And we had some really cold overnights where we had to bundle in those little huts. What are they called? Hogans.
Hogans.
That's where we stayed as
They
families.
still have the Hogans? I don't know.
Yeah, they do? Okay. Well, we bundled up in those Hogans with families. We graduated to cabins after a while, but we started out in those Hogans, and it was cold, but we had so much fun.
We did it twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, you know, before family camp, before the camp started for the full season. And that started Friday night until Sunday. We ended up after our lunch and worship on Sunday.
It was a very good strengthening bond for not only our family, but for the church. as well, and you really got to know people when you spent the whole weekend with them. You could hear how much their children cried and all other good kinds of things.
My most memorable activity is when we started the walk-in ministry. I had just retired from teaching, and I had waited about a year to decide what sort of volunteer work I wanted to do, and they just started the walk-in ministry. And it was over in what was then our church house, which is where the parking lot is now. And we used to serve, of course, soup, same standard menu soup and applesauce and fruit and bread and things like that, and sandwiches. And I used to go in the kitchen and see what was left over. We had a cook then. Can you believe it? We had a cook. And I used to go in and see what was left over. And one time I almost put the associate pastor's lunch in the soup pot. But anyway, that's my most memorable activity, was walk-in ministry, and it's still going on, okay?
Yeah, and that walk-in ministry was started on a very small scale. No one anticipated what it would develop into. But David, what's his name?
Morgan.
David Morgan started, well, people would come by the church, one or two at a time, looking for handouts. And David would go into the kitchen in the church house, which was later built, the Cecil House originally was, and he'd make a sandwich or two. Well, anyway, from that small beginning, gradually more and more people came by, and gradually that walk-in ministry just evolved into a great big thing.
What was it like to be an early woman leader of the church?
Well, that time I told you about already, about whether the church would move or not. The man who was in charge said, and I made the motion then not to move. He said, disregard that woman's, thoughts. Yeah, motion. Anyway, I did make the motion again, and everybody passed it. See, so he was the one who was not in sync with the rest of us. I was made an elder. Some people didn't think we ought to have women elders. In fact, there were some women, very strong, who didn't think we ought to have women elders. And so I was serving communion. Well, I said, give me a place to serve where I won't have to serve those people. And so I've always never have served communion except at one place where they didn't sit. They're all dead now, but they were way over on the other side of the church. I served seat 10, which is from the front to the middle on the north side of the church.
So how's that changed over the years?
Well, we have many more women elders and deacons too. And if they didn't have them, I don't know what they do. It's good. It made the church more alive, I think.
Can't think of one right now. Can you, Mary Ann?
Well, have you heard about Josh? Do you know who he was? Well, he was a black man that used to, he was sexton for this church for ever, I think.
And now somebody has talked to you about Joshua Kenny. Did they tell you he wrote a book? Did anybody show you his book? Well, here's a copy of his book.
And people would say, do you know Josh? And he considered himself a member of the church. And he used to sit, when we first came, he'd been here for about 45 years when we first came, and he would sit out and greet everybody. And somebody said, when they came back after he retired and died, I think, they said, well, I want to know who is Josh? They thought he might be a prophet or something.
But he really ran the church. And he went out there to the door and met everybody when they came in on Sunday or whatever time they came. He was a member of the women of the church, came to our meetings. He was a great person and lived a long, happy life, taking care of people in the church.
Oh, when Josh died, he had told me what kind of funeral he wanted, what he wanted at his funeral. And one thing that he wanted was to be put in the ladies' parlor. Well, the ladies' parlor, when he was working way back then, was what we call the heritage room. That's that room next to the chapel. Well, at that time, it was the church office because we were building the church house, so the church office. So we couldn't put Josh in. But what we did do was the next morning, we put his body in the sanctuary and opened the front door and announced to the public that he was what we used to call lying in state. So he was there, and people came all day long to pay their respects to Joshua.
Well, Josh, he lived in the church.
Yeah. Oh, he did?
Yes, he did. And that's why one reason he was always here. This was home for him, and he never saw a single person that loved this church more than Josh did.
What would be the biggest change in the building or the neighborhood since you joined?
The chapel had a shed roof on it when it was built in 1845. And then I'm not sure exactly when it was that it was made with the A roof that it has now. But in 1970, they took the width of the hallway off of the chapel. So the roof had to be changed, and all of those timbers that are up there had to be cut down. So that, and the Tiffany window was moved, and the floor was raised, because when we came out of the door of the sanctuary, you open the door and you go right down the steps. So it was about 3 feet lower than it is today. So when they added the hall, they made everything the same level with the sanctuary floor.
What would be the biggest change in the church or neighborhood since you joined?
I know lots of changes. The cathedral house was not adequate for the needs of the church. And so under Dr. Muller's guidance and urging, we built a church house where the parking deck is now located. That meant the cathedral house had to go. And that was quite a historic building. And it had a real personal connection with a prominent family of this church, John Cecil and his family, and Russell Scott. Anyway, it was determined that the best disposition of the Cecil house was to dismantle it, haul it over to, I believe it's on Marshall Street, and reconstruct it. That left room for the new church house, which was Dr. O's pride and joy. And we met there for a long, long time. And then eventually it became evident that the church had greater needs. And so the movement was started to get rid of the church house, acquire the Virginia building, and build a parking deck. All that was done. I can't say it was not done without a lot of misgivings, as you would expect.
No money.
But it was all done, and so far as I know, everybody is happy now.
How has being a part of this church changed you?
Well, honey, I was so young when I came here. I just grew up here. I just grew up in this church, and this was my church family.
I grew up in a small church that had less than 200 members, and I knew everybody there. And then when I came here, I just gradually met a few people, mostly the women, and then I met their husbands as we became friends. But working in the church has been the biggest part of my life.
And people say, well, what do you do? And I said, I'm a professional volunteer, because I volunteer all kinds of things.
I hope our faith has grown. I hope we've grown in wisdom with God and man and their needs. And I'm sure that you couldn't be in this atmosphere without having grown religious, theologically, religiously,
Right.
spiritually.
We feel so much of it that the church is our family. I really look to that. So many people we knew, and we've been in this church now, it's 42 years, except for a couple years away. And I think that's important that this is a church family. And I think the main thing that's happening right now is in the last 5 to 10 years is the young people, families coming back, and you and the others, the young people coming back in our Sunday school, where our Sunday school is overflowing with kids in all different ages, and that's important for a church.
I think the perfect church would be when everybody in it, every member, could feel that they were doing some volunteer work. And it could be cooking, helping prepare meals for Caritas or for the different groups. It could be teaching or singing or being kind to somebody else, somebody that's sick.
Can you recall any old stories of the church that were passed down to your generation?
Well, we have a lot of stories that were passed down. I think one of the best things is about Miss Catherine Halls, who was a lady who had all these boys in a group. They were called the Covenanters, after some Covenanter group in Scotland. And they came and really made a big difference in the life of the city. Well, she got them all together, and they had different projects they did, and they had a band, and they had marching, and I don't know what all they had, but it was a great thing. Miss Catherine Halls. And if you go down, of course we have the Halls building here, which she gave. And then we have this beautiful Tiffany window in the chapel that she also gave. But she was a real inspiration to all of these men. There are very few of them left now, but some who remember being a Covenanter. And
the first minister was Dr. Moses Drury Hogue. Dr. Hogue was the minister here for 54 years. Now, he has a couple of great-granddaughters in the church who can still tell stories about Dr. Hogue. But let me tell you one that is recorded in that book and in a lot of other places. During the Civil War, Dr. Hogue went to Europe to buy Bibles for people in the Confederate Army. He left December the 22nd, a few days before Christmas. Can you imagine a minister taking off and leaving the church just before Christmas? That ought to suggest to you that something was unusual about this. He traveled in the company of a colonel in the Confederate Army, but the colonel was not in uniform. He was in civilian clothing. He traveled by railroad to Charleston, South Carolina, where he ran the blockade. And that again was peculiar because only the military had free access to the railroads. Dr. Hogue gave a wonderful description. He was a marvelous speaker and writer. He gave a wonderful description of running the blockade. They waited until it was dark. They built up a great deal of steam in the boiler and the engine, and shut down all the lights and ran. They did not want to get fired on by federal ships which were blockading the port of Charleston, South Carolina. He got through it. The trip to England took him about 6 weeks to get there. He had to go in a roundabout way. He had to go through Cuba and a couple of other places to get there. He had 300 Bibles within 6 or 8 weeks, but remained a year, and got involved in a lot of other things, which he very carefully detailed, and some of them he didn't detail. He tried to sell bonds for the Confederacy. He visited Thomas Carlyle, who was a famous writer of the period, and there were hints that he did other things too. When Dr. Hope later was in Richmond, he found out that there had been a federal arrest warrant for him for being a gun runner. I suspect that he bought guns for the Confederacy in England, but it's awfully, you can find suggestions of this, but you never find real hardcore proof of it, except that there was a warrant for his arrest as a gun runner. When the Civil War was over, he left town with the Confederate government and went into hiding in Milton, North Carolina. Nobody knew where he was. He finally came back and remained a minister here until 1899.
In your opinion, what was the most important event in the life of the church since you've been?
Well, that is hard to say. I thought that the 100th, not just because of the celebration, but it was a turning point in the congregation's thinking. I mean, we began to be more mission-minded when we started Gambles Hill, and ran that for about 20 years, I guess.
Well, when the church was first built, this area was the edge of Richmond. See, it was the far end. There were some houses around here, like the one across the street that's still there. That was one of the houses that was here. There was some beautiful houses. We were a neighborhood church, and that way for several years. But then the city had moved all around, and a lot of the churches had moved out to outlying places in the city. And we just thought somebody needed to be in the downtown. Some church. See, here was Centenary Methodist Church was here, and St. Paul's Episcopal, St. Peter's Catholic Church were downtown. We needed to be in the downtown. And that's where we've been. And when we had our 125th celebration, I guess it was, we had a big time, and they showed a picture of the steeple or the tower of this church standing above everything downtown. And it was just a sight to think of our influence in the middle of the city.
Our congregation then was, you know, we had a neighborhood. We don't have a neighborhood now for congregation. See, we're the city, the whole city, and the counties, you know, the city. That's our congregation area now.
What was the funniest thing that ever happened at Second Presbyterian?
Well, I had to think about that, and I think the funniest thing that ever happened, when we out, little boys were little, we used to sit up in the balcony, and we were sitting up. I think they were in the nursery for a while, but anyway, they grew up, of course. And we used to, we were sitting there one time, and it was very quiet, and all of a sudden this little old lady, she's probably younger than I am now, but I thought she was old. She all of a sudden she went, and she was a long time member of the church, and she didn't know she did it. Well, we didn't know what to laugh or not, but that's one thing that stuck in my head.
Well, Dr. Clark was in the pulpit preaching a sermon one day when he had a little accident. He had a piece of land which stuck up over the Bible, and he started gesticulating, and during his preaching, first thing you know, whap! The lamp, he knocked it off the pulpit and down into the front where the communion table is now. Well, I was a head usher at the time, so I had to go up to the front and pick up the lamp and hand it up to him.
I bet he didn't even stop talking, did he?
It didn't faze him a bit.
Well, I haven't even told y'all, I burned the paint off of the outside of the sanctuary. I couldn't get a painter to do it, and I had an art student from VCU that worked in our neighborhood, and I asked him if he would be interested in helping me, that it would be a job, a good big job. He'd been doing days work, anything for a few hours to stay in school, and this was in the summertime. So my friend that was living with me at the time, because she had separated from her husband, she had a white Datsun pickup truck, and I went out and got the scaffolding on the back of that truck, and we put it up, one window at a time, and that kept us busy for 2 months. But we burned all the paint off and put 2 coats of primer and 1 coat of finished paint. And that's when, and then right after that is when we got the stained glass windows, leaded glass windows in.
Is there anything you would like to change about this church?
I think the thing is there are many things that we've talked about in this session, the improvements that we'd like to make. That the fixing of the roof and the fixing of the brownstone and all of that has come first, because that structurally we need to do that. And but I think there's some changes that we ought to look at in our facility, which we have looked at the dining room, to be able to handle more people and how we do that. And I think it's important that we keep looking at ways to grow and to serve you and the young people as well as our older congregation.
I'm more interested in the mission outreach of the church. That's where I've put my emphasis a lot through the years, because of our friendship, personal friendship with Dave and Holly Miller, who were missionaries to Africa for 40 years. And now their daughter and her husband are there in Malawi. And they are just doing so much good. There's so much trouble in Africa, as you boys and girls know, I'm sure. The HIV and AIDS, which is killing so many. And the Millers Millers and Dimmock's both have done such a good job. I think that kind of outreach is one of my big priorities.
Well, I would always like to see us grow. And of course, I think we have such a diverse congregation. And I hope we never lose that. I hope we maybe grow in diversity. And certainly, I hope we grow in unity. We always need to be unified. We need to be diverse, but we need to be unified. And I guess I just want us to strive always to, I don't know whether you're even aware of it, but the cornerstone of the church house when it was built was to know him and make him known. And we have put that part of the cornerstone of the building out here. And if that can be our goal as we grow, to know him and make him known, we can't go wrong, I don't think.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, it has been a very enriching part, spiritually, part of my life. I am delighted that I ended up here. I think it was divine providence. It wasn't by chance.
But I often think about the history of this church. It goes down 1845. That's a long time. That's longer than we've been here. Right. But anyway, think of I believe that there are saints that they look at down. We don't know. We don't see them. We have a real heritage to. You have to excuse me, I actually teach school, and so I have to have a little sermon coming along with it. But anyway, I think we have quite a heritage in this church, and I'm so glad you all are doing this.
And I think church and religion means a lot. Faith means a lot now to young families. And I think that to come and be in a group, you know, in a community that's just thinking the same as you are, is good. Good. It's meant a lot to me to be in this church. I don't know all the people now, but maybe they know me. I don't know. I've enjoyed. It's been a great thing for me to be in this church.
Through the door in just a second are going to come the masterminds behind the 5th grade Sunday school class video project.
Hi, I'm really late. Hi, I'm Anna Sparhowski. Hey, I'm Dan. My name is RJ.
Hi, I'm Marky.
Hello, I'm Andrew.
I'm Ryan.
Hello, my name is RJ Jeffries, and I've been a member at Second for 10 years now.
Hi, I'm Marcus Mapes, and I've been a member of the church for 10 years.
Hi, I'm Ryan Sims, and I've been a member of Second Presbyterian Church for about a year.
Hi, my name is William Blades, and I think I've been a member at Second Presbyterian for 11 years. I'm Anna Spyhowski, and I've been a member of the church for since kindergarten. Hi, my name is Andrew Carr, and I've been a member at Second Presbyterian Church for about 10 years now. Okay, bye. Hi, my name is Nan Gallagher, and I've been a member of this church for almost 10 years.
Okay, we're going to find out what everybody has done to contribute to this project.
I manned the camera once, and
I've interviewed twice and went on and done the camera 3 times.
I've interviewed a lot of people and I've been helping out with their pictures.
I interviewed every person except for one.
I interviewed some of the people, but most of the time I did the camera.
I did the camera a couple times. I've interviewed a lot, and I did the camera sometimes, and then I took lots of pictures of.
I thought it was something to learn from because I had no clue that people who were here like a long time ago wrote stories and everything.
See this guy, Josh, he seemed like he was a big part of everybody's life back then and stuff. And church, that he was a really big part of church and stuff. And he would greet him. He kind of lived at the church. And he wrote this book that lots of people like and stuff. And the church was like totally different. No parking deck. There wasn't a parking deck.
The church started out really, really small.
I bet the surroundings of the church are a lot more beautiful now. More grass, more trees maybe. They had a lot more different lives than we do now.